Rockets from Lebanon striking deeper into Israeli territory. The continuing row over donations and gifts is casting a shadow over the start of Labour Party conference, with the Deputy Leader, Angela Rayner, amongst those facing difficult questions. It's emerged a second opportunity to bring the former owner of Harrods, Mohammed Al Fayed, to trial over sexual abuse allegations was missed by the Crown Prosecution Service in 2015. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the political journalist and broadcaster Theo Usherwood and the journalist and author Rachel Shabby. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the Metro leads with the start of the Labour Party conference against the backdrop of ongoing questions over Cabinet Ministers' acceptance of gifts and favours. The Mail reports that the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, has hired an official photographer. Turning to policy, the Eye says the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is under pressure to resist a return to austerity as unions at the conference voice their opposition to cuts to winter fuel payments. The Express says retired members of the Unite Union will protest at Labour conference to try and force a vote to scrap the winter fuel cuts. The Telegraph leads on a warning from Rachel Reeves, who says it will argue that the UK faces economic ruin unless the public finances are stabilised. The Guardian claims the Chancellor will announce investigations into more than £600 million worth of COVID contracts awarded under the Conservatives. While the Mirror reports that Rachel Reeves is set to announce a war on tax dodgers. In the world of Strictly Come Dancing, The Sun splashes on the lowest viewing figures for the first live show of a series since it began. And finally, The Star leads on a pledge from Donald Trump for the US to reach Mars if he wins the presidential election. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Theo Usherwood and Rachel Shabby. Welcome to both of you. Let's start with the Telegraph and Rachel Reeves, her plans, the Chancellor, saying that UK must accept hard times or risk ruin. Theo?
Yes, Rachel Reeves, in her speech later tomorrow, is going to be talking about, I think, tax cuts, tax rises, I should say. That's the suggestion from this, rather than a return, as she puts it, to conservative austerity, which would, of course, mean spending cuts across departments. She'll talk about the country facing ruin unless it faces up to the tough choices. And, of course, we know there is going to be a vote tomorrow afternoon, which is being brought by a motion brought by all five of the major trade unions on that decision when it comes to cutting the £300 winter fuel allowance. That's going to be difficult. It's going to be symbolic. It won't bind Keir Starmer and the government into a particular position. But this is not perhaps the start to the first Labour Party conference in government in 15 years that Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner and Rachel Reeves would have been hoping for.
And Rachel, is she going to be able to convince people that this isn't austerity?
I doubt it. I mean, according to the Telegraph, she's going to say that Britain faces economic ruin unless we adopt the measures that she's suggesting, which she describes as tough decisions, but decisions that would move the country, that are the right choices for now. The trouble is that a lot of people, you know, even like centrists in her own party are saying, no, these are exactly the wrong decisions to get us out of the economic crisis and stagnation that we are in. And so that's the worry, that not only is this going to be tough and painful for people already facing a lot of pain with the economic situation being what it is, but it's going to, you know, plunge more people into more desperate situations, including pensioners. Whole chunks of the elderly population will, quite frankly, be facing death because of this. Let's just call it what it is. That is what's going to happen. Age Concerned charities have said that. But there will be no reward. There will be no prize that she's promising because, according to, you know, now mainstream economic advice, that isn't the way you build your country or you build the nation's economy out of a recession, that you actually do have to invest in order to see any kind of economic growth. So even on its own terms, this is careering towards failure, and that's the frustrating thing about it.
It's a difficult one. Of course, Rachel Reeves doesn't want to come across as not being responsible with the public finances. She wants to project that image of being an iron chancellor. It was a key part of her message going into the general election. But there is undoubtedly going to be, there are going to be tax rises, particularly around inheritance tax, potentially capital gains tax. There seems to be a suggestion in the Telegraph piece and also in the Daily Express piece that they're not going to go down, Labour aren't going to go down the route of a standalone wealth tax. And they're looking, and there had been some suggestion about the single person's discount on council tax, and that's worth, it affects 8 million people, 4 or 5 million of which are pensioners. And that, for a Band D property, is around £543 a year. It's known as the widow's tax because half of those are pensioners who would face that council tax, that loss of that discount. And the suggestion is that actually Rachel Reeves, obviously spooked by what she's, the backlash against cutting the winter fuel allowance, is not going to go down that particular route.
There is a feeling that she's kind of setting expectations ahead of the budget, that there isn't much good news, and if you prepare people now, they perhaps will receive it a little more favourably.
I just think if you say that to people now, after they put their trust in you, they're just going to start to hate you, and that's what we can see from the polling. I mean, Keir Starmer's own ratings just took a real nosedive.
But that's because of the gifts and...
Yeah, but I'm sure the pensioners that voted Labour for the first time in this election did not expect to be slapped in the face so soon after Labour coming to power. I'm sure lots of people went to the polling booth with some sense of hope that, OK, maybe under Labour it will be a bit better. And to have the Labour Party say, no, sorry, it's going to be just the same, except potentially maybe worse. How is that not going to do anything other than foment resentment, which, by the way, the far right is waiting in the wings in the Reform Party to make hay with?
The two go hand in hand. So you've got Keir Starmer, a couple of days ago, standing in front of the television camera saying, I've got to make a choice between whether I'm in the stands or in a corporate box when I'm going to watch my beloved Arsenal play football. And this winter we're going to have pensioners having to choose between heating or eating. And I think that there's been a political tin ear on the part of Downing Street when it comes to dealing with, the row about gifts and donations and, what you accept or what you don't accept. And at the same time, putting pressure onto the household budgets of people on fixed incomes. And they haven't been alive to that. And it doesn't matter, there seems to be a sort of feeling that when you listen to Keir Starmer and you listen to what comes out of Number 10, that there's some sort of, plot by the right-wing media to bring down the government, and that they're not at the same standard of, the same standard of scrutiny wasn't put to Boris Johnson, Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak. But ultimately, they came into government promising to clean up politics. And in order, with that strategy, you need to, hand in hand, have a strategy to be, crystal clear that you are prepared to hit a higher grade of political ethics. You're going to be whiter than white.
But you say that they've seemingly had a tin ear, but Sir Keir Starmer has listened, because they've decided that they're not going to take donations for clothes, and they're not going to take money in that way anymore. So
it's a little bit too late, though, isn't it?
Too late.
Because you've got Bridget Phillips and the Education Secretary saying a birthday party wasn't a personal event. I mean, it's Angela Rayner getting into this squall about going on a personal holiday, but they're not actually following the rules and declaring that Sam Tarry was joining her on that holiday, albeit at a later date, and actually hadn't followed the rules to what, Parliament's very clear that if you have a third-party beneficiary, then you need to declare that.
Let's turn to the Eye. Similar story. Reeves urged not to return to austerity. Labour colleagues are cautioning her not to allow UK public spending to return to austerity era. So seemingly within the party, there are calls for her to take a certain course and divisions.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many chunks of the party that are opposed to this, and precisely because it does feel like some horrendous Groundhog Day. I mean, we've had this argument before. We thought we had buried austerity over the last few years. We've got Labour's Mayor of the West Midlands, Tracy Brabin, saying, quote, "We've been here before, we've seen this movie, austerity does not grow the economy." Like, this is, I think even the IMF said that, right? It is so over. Austerity as a concept has tanked. It's been proven to be the worst thing you could do if you want to grow an economy. So to have a Labour Chancellor come in and say what Rachel Reeves is saying, it's incredible, actually. I mean, how are they a Labour Party and still saying this?
I think part of the problem is that since what we had was we built up, £500 billion worth of debt with COVID. You then had the spike, the inflationary spike as a result of higher gas prices from what happened with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And that, of course, meant that interest rates had to go up. So, of course, the amount the government is paying down to pay down the national debt has spiked, and that's made it very difficult for any room that the incoming chancellor might want in order to fiscal headroom in order to put forward for public spending, and therefore she can't borrow more money.
She can.
Or she might have. Well, she can, but it's going to be incredibly expensive.
Because the fiscal rule is not a thing. It's not a thing. It's a fiction. It's been broken a million times before. It can be broken again.
But if you break it now, it's going to be particularly expensive.
Says who? Who says that?
Well, if you have a interest rate of 5% and you've got your debt is hundreds of millions of pounds, billions of pounds.
If you're borrowing,
then it's going to cost a lot of money.
If you're you're the government. You can borrow whatever you want, as we saw.
But the money still has to be paid back.
It has to be paid back, but it's not the same that.
We had what was the figure out the other day? Was 100% of national debt had reached 100% of GDP.
But
it's huge.
These are figures that bear no relation to what a government can actually do. A government is in control of its own budget. It's not a household like you and me.
No.
It can spend whatever it wants, as we saw with COVID, as we saw after the World War.
Yes.
These are fictions invented by the right wing, which the left wing, for some reason, which the Labour Party, for some reason, is cleaving to. It's not a thing. It doesn't have to be.
Interest rate at 5 or 6% is a thing.
It's not a thing for a government. It's a thing for you and me.
If you borrow more, then you have to pay back more.
Yes, but that's a fiction. A government can also tax more. I mean, the idea that the government cannot borrow to invest is a fiction invented by right-wing economists.
But I think it says in the front page of the Daily Telegraph that they are going to tax more. They're looking at capital gains tax and inheritance tax.
Yeah, but it needs a higher tax on the highest rate of income. We don't. The major economic problem we've got in this country is massive inequality. We are a rich country where all the money is funneled towards the very wealthiest. That's what needs to be addressed. You can't do that unless you tax the highest earners.
Okay. Yeah. We're going to have to leave it there. We can continue this discussion in the break, Thea and Rachel. Thanks very much for the moment. Coming up, the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah is escalating. We'll be discussing that next. Do stay with us. Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
They have breached the road. There is a lot of gas being fired all around us. शांति से इनको समझाओ वरना ये हम लोग It is an absolute carnival kind of atmosphere out here for Prime Minister Modi's decisive victory. These students are defying the prohibitory orders and now they're going to be arrested. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. The roads have been inundated The only way out is to get people by boat. What is feared that over 200 people might have died because of these landslides. This on any given day would have been bustling with people, but today it's absolutely deserted. This is one of the most sensitive areas of northeast Delhi where there's been clashes. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
I'm Dan Whitehead, I'm Sky's West of England correspondent.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent. We help you to understand the world with us.
I'm Adam Parsons, I'm Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world.
I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm one of Sky's Midlands correspondents. The reason I do this job is because you never know where it's going to lead.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Theo Ashwood and Rachel Shabby. Let's take a look at the Guardian front page and the situation in the Middle East, the escalation of hostilities. Some saying it's actually hard to say whether we haven't actually crossed into all-out war now. Rachel?
I think it looks that way. I think Israel knowingly escalated the situation. It's already said that it's changed its aims of this war, indicating that there is a changed policy in regard to the northern border with Lebanon and Hezbollah. And we had that pager attack, which at the very least was a violation of international law and a war crime that was a complete disregard for civilian life, according to the UN.
But Israel hasn't accepted responsibility for those pagers and walkie-talkies.
It has not officially accepted responsibility for those, no, but I would struggle to imagine who else would have been behind that, and certainly all the newspapers in Israel are talking as though it did, in fact, do that. So we have a situation where, of course, for Israel, of course, it wants its civilian population that has been evacuated from the north in the border with Lebanon, of course it wants them to return back to their homes. I mean, that's normal. However, you know, Hezbollah has made clear from the start that it has opened that front as part of a strategy of support for Palestinians in Gaza, and that will stop when there is a ceasefire. Now, we've had talk of a ceasefire for almost a year now. It's been quite clear Israel's own government, own officials, own military officials are saying that Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has consistently torpedoed that deal. And absent the US really stepping up pressure, which is it not going to do, this absolutely has escalated into an all-out regional war. And of course, the collateral damage, as usual, is civilian life, as we've seen by the apocalyptic death toll in Gaza.
International voices are obviously imploring both sides to step back from the brink. You know, we've had the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres talked of the possibility of transforming Lebanon into another Gaza, a UN official warning of imminent catastrophe in the region.
It's very serious. Israel's fighting a war for its very existence on 7 fronts. And they've been very upfront about that. And, you know, the pager attack, walkie-talkie attack, whilst Israel hasn't claimed responsibility for it, it was designed to be a targeted attack against Hezbollah commanders and Hezbollah fighters. And of course, yes, there were some civilian casualties, but there were nothing like the civilian casualties that we've seen in Gaza. It's a very serious situation, and it's likely that everybody wants there to be some sort of peace agreement, ceasefire. But at the moment, given where we find ourselves, given what happened with that attack, and then of course the reprisals, it's very difficult to see how we reach that point.
And this quote from Benjamin Netanyahu, extremely bellicose, he says, in the last few days we have inflicted on Hezbollah a sequence of blows that it did not imagine. If Hezbollah did not understand the message, I promise you it will understand the message.
I mean, the Israeli government is out of control. That is obvious. The rational actor, and it gives me no pleasure to say this, of what I consider to be a tyrannical regime. The rational actor in this scenario is actually Iran, which so far has resisted an escalation despite these provocations. It's clear that Netanyahu wants to drag Iran into a war and thereby drag the US into something like that. That's been his goal for some time now, even before the assault on Gaza. But again, can we please look at the collateral, the damage to civilians? You say some casualties in Lebanon.
I don't think
thousands of people were injured in that assault.
Well, they were Hezbollah fighters.
Can I just finish?
Okay.
The reason it goes against international law is that you cannot booby trap devices like that and have them blow up indiscriminately in random areas because civilians will be injured, and that's exactly what happened.
You can't launch rocket attacks on children playing football.
I'm not saying that's okay either. When did I say that was okay?
Well, you didn't say... Look, it's a war and there are casualties on both sides, and that is not to condone either, but it's very difficult to get to this point. Just on the point about Iran, Hamas launched the most appalling terrorist attack against Israel on October the 7th, killing 1,200 and taking more than 200 hostages. That was Iran, a rational actor? Please.
We are going to leave it there. Much more coming up in the 11 o'clock hour. Theo and Rachel, thank you very much for a respectful debate. We will be returning. And Hezbollah and Israel exchange fire across the Lebanese border as the militant group declares an open-ended battle with Israel. That the very latest. Much more coming up at the top of the hour.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered.